Morning Year 7 and Year 8. This is Lesson 4 as part of our big question, how have migrants changed Britain? Today's title, who were the first English people? And our two key words, the Dark Ages, actually one of the key terms we had last lesson, and Beowulf, a new key term. So please could you pause the video, write down the title and write down both the key words and their definitions in your book, please. Our Connect task, 5 questions from the previous lessons. Most of these questions from last lesson, so lesson 3. If you're struggling with any of these questions, please do go back, look at your notes or re-watch the previous video, and please pause the video and answer these in full sentences. So on our timeline today, we are kind of recapping the first 4 boxes. So in most lessons we've kind of been going along the timeline, but today we're going to recap the first few boxes. Were Anglo-Saxons really living in the Dark Ages? What I would like you to do here is read the text on the screen and some of the key words at the bottom in blue, and then using that information could you answer in full sentences these first 2 questions. So pause the video and complete that task, please. Is it fair to see all Vikings as murderers? What I'd like you to do now is again read the information on the top right of the screen, so those 3 paragraphs there, and then at the bottom the question in bold, write your own interpretation of the Vikings. Do you think that they were more warriors or peaceful settlers or somewhere in between? You can use evidence from last lesson, which was all about the Vikings, but also the information that you've read this lesson to help you make your decision. So I'm looking for a few sentences answering that question in bold. So pause the video and complete that task. So who were the first English, or the English? I'm going to read the section for us because this is important as part of the next few slides. This is where we're going to focus most of the rest of the lesson. It's very difficult to decide who the first English people were, as there had been ongoing, complex and early migration since the first hunter-gatherers. At one time, the land we called England was empty of people. So it's only through waves of migration and invasion that these islands were populated. Every wave of migration was always seen as hostile, dangerous at first, until over time the invaders became part of England. It wasn't until the 10th century that England was formally united as a country under one king. Now, this is one of the main tasks of the lesson. What I'd like you to do, there's a table here, and you're going to either make this table on a Word document or draw out this table, and using the information on the next slide you'll need to complete the table below. So you can see in our first column that you've got the different groups of people. The second column you need to then tell me why and when, so kind of a date or a rough date, when did they migrate? What is their claim to being the first English people? And we'll see more of the information to complete that column on the next slide. And then I want you to kind of, once you've done the first 2 columns, step back a bit and think, okay, how strong a claim does each group of people have to claiming that they're the first English or the English? And you're going to say 5 is a really strong claim, they deserve to be called the English, and 1 is kind of a weaker claim, maybe they shouldn't be called the English. So here's the information. You can see top left you've got your first group of people, the hunter-gatherers, and then you can see the numbers go 2, 3, 4, 5, and that is the order that you can go in. And what I'd like you to do is, using this information, you can go back to the previous slide and complete the table. So you can see the instruction there in the top right. So read this information carefully, take your time with this activity, and pause the video now and complete that, please. So almost there, our demonstrate task. What I'd like you to do is describe who the English were before 1066. And we're going to look at events after 1066 soon. But describe who the English were before 1066. Consider the different migrants, the people that had moved to England, to the island at different times, why they'd moved there, and what impact they'd had and for how long. So here's an example first paragraph, which you might want to write down yourself, copy down, but then you're going to carry on, and you can see at the bottom, complete the rest of the response. So this is your extended writing task. Here's the example first paragraph. England had many different migrants to its shore between 800,000 BC to 1066. The first hunter-gatherers wandered across land, now sea, known as Doggerland, in search of food. They were not really considered English though, because they did not have an identity and may not have settled there. No society was really developed, and they would not have considered themselves English, despite being the first people. Now I'd like you to continue telling the story of the different groups of people that came to England and settled there, the migrants, and how they kind of became English or developed the term English. Use the information from the table before to help you, and continue that response, please. Finally, consolidate. What I'd like you to do, you've got 3 interpretations here of the Vikings. Which one do you think is the most accurate? Remember, all interpretations, all 3 of these could be valid. You could back all of them up with some evidence, but the strength of an interpretation depends on the evidence that you do use. Is it more convincing or less convincing? So could you just write maybe a sentence explaining why you agree with one particular interpretation over more than the other 2? And then you're done. Well done.